Before the first candle ever touched a wick, I could feel the day leaning forward, bright and balanced, like a breath you hold a second too long. My name is Maya Tran, and I'm 33. I keep networks humming for a living, and I make lists for sport. I can tell you which grocery restocks juice boxes on Tuesdays, and which brand of trash bags won't quit when you look at them wrong. Today's list had 27 items and a star by the most important one. Make sure my boy turns 10, surrounded by joy. The backyard smelled like sunscreen and charcoal, the whole block a low simmer of summer. Blue streamers fluttered against the fence I scrubbed last night until the wood felt new. I'd rented an inflatable soccer goal that winked in the sun. On the table, a sheet cake read Max, level 10 in pixel font, as if the year had been a video game he kept winning. I lined the porch rail with little water bottles in neat rows, like a tiny parade that would never get thirsty. And beneath the shade, I gathered folding chairs I'd borrowed from a neighbor who waved across the street and promised to send an extra cooler if we went big. Max's classmates came like weather, fast, cheerful, sneakers skidding over grass, the small, high sound kids make when fun ricochets between them. Someone yelled, "Goal!" before the ball even left a foot. I taped a trash bag to the fence so the yard wouldn't end the day looking like a regret, and checked my phone out of habit. Then not out of habit. In the family thread, my mother Linda had said, "We'll be there, wouldn't miss it." My sister Chloe promised party favors. My brother Derek wrote, "After the gym, 20 minutes tops." I pictured them moving through their mornings, choosing outfits, grabbing keys. I imagined the doorbell. I set the plates, tucked a lighter into my pocket, and recentered the cake. Max zipped past, hair already pasted to his forehead, cheeks lit with the kind of happiness you want to bottle and keep on a shelf for hard days. "Mom, is this the best day?" he asked, not stopping. "That's what we ordered," I said, and meant it. The backyard lifted into something like music, kids singing off-key as they tried to agree on a rule nobody would remember by evening. The open chairs waited politely, white and patient in the sun. "Tell me where you're watching from. Drop your city in the comments so I can picture you there with us." The clock edged forward, the breeze tugged the streamers, and the doorbell, whenever it decided to, would tell the rest. The first pizza box hit my porch like a drum beat, and the backyard answered. Kids whooped and skidded through the grass, their elbows shiny with sunscreen, their faces split wide like the day had opened just for them. I signed for the order, asked the driver to wait a minute, just in case my doorbell decided to cooperate, and he glanced past me at the chaos, gave a little grin and said, "You're good." I balanced the boxes on my hip, nudged the screen door with my shoulder, and carried lunch to the folding tables. Plates, slices, napkins, hands reached, thanks flew, a paper cup toppled and rolled like it had somewhere urgent to be. I checked my phone without thinking, then I checked it on purpose. The family thread still sat where I left it, pale and quiet, the promises sleeping in their bubbles. I told myself they were circling for parking. I told myself the gym could run long. At 3:11, my phone woke up in my hand. One line from my mother. "Don't be dramatic. It's just a kid's party." I read it twice because the first reading didn't stick to anything inside me. Not running late, not on my way, just that sentence, flat as a lid settling on a pot. Beside me, a group of boys argued about whether a header counted. Someone yelled, "Kick off!" as if sound alone could make a rule. I opened the next ping without meaning to. Chloe's story filled the screen, orange glasses of something sparkling, a neat stack of pancakes, hands with rings I didn't recognize. "Self-care Saturday with my people," the caption said. In the top corner, like a sunspot, I could see my mother's sunglasses catching the light. Across the back of the booth, a familiar forearm with a gym band lay easy as a promise. Derek. The kitchen faucet squeaked when I turned it. I rinsed the knife just to feel the shock of cold water. For a moment, I centered myself on small, honest things. The drip's insistence, the lemon soap, the smear of frosting I wiped from the counter with the back of my hand. The yard roared again, Someone scored for real that time, and the sound pulled me back like a rope. "Mom, can we sing?" Max stood in the doorway, hair pasted to his forehead, a flush high on his cheeks. He looked happy in the way that makes you wish the day could be stored on a shelf, labeled and reachable. "We can," I said. "Get them in a circle." The children crowded around the table, voices arranging themselves into a key no choir would choose and every parent recognizes. I lit 10 candles, one after another, hands steady. The flame tips leaned toward each other like they knew the song already. "Ready?" I asked. Max nodded, chest up like a small brave sail. We sang. We didn't break the chair circle to make room for people who weren't there. The breeze slipped through the streamers and turned them into little blue rivers. When the last note wobbled, Max took one breath and sent every flame out in a single try. Smoke curled in thin gray ribbons, sweet and quick. I caught his eye, clapped like I'd never learned another way to move my hands. "Slice or corner?" I asked. "Corner," he said, and everyone cheered because corner meant extra frosting. I set plates into waiting palms and made a tunnel with mine so the cake wouldn't slide. The chairs along the fence kept their white patience. The water bottles waited like a small parade that had paused for a longer song than planned. Inside, I washed the knife again and set it on the towel to dry. I opened the group chat and let the screen show me what I already knew. Outside, a ball thumped the fence. Someone shouted, "Again!" The day kept going because children are built that way. I went back out, held the door for the breeze, and passed the next plate to the next pair of hands. 2 mornings later, the kitchen still smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and leftover cake. I was packing Max's lunch, turkey sandwich, carrot sticks, the blue juice box he likes, when my phone lit up on the counter. The family thread had a new subject line, all caps like a siren. "Important RSVP, Sweet 16, my niece." I wiped my hands on a towel and opened it. A PDF sat at the bottom like a present I hadn't asked for. Above it, a row of messages blinked into place. From my mother, Linda. "Formal attire required, deposit due Friday." Then, as if she were noting the weather, "Maya will cover Grandma's spot, fixed income." Chloe chimed in with heart emojis and, "We're going premium, it has to be elevated." Derek, "If there's an open bar, totally worth it." I tapped the PDF. Gold borders bloomed across the screen. Cursive fonts curled into themselves. Venue name, date, dress code. Under contributions, a neat figure, $2,000 per person. I scrolled, my stomach going tight, and found a page I didn't expect. Bottom right corner. My own headshot, the one from LinkedIn, cropped close and polished, set beneath a title I hadn't earned. Primary family sponsor. I hadn't agreed to $1. I hadn't agreed to my name. Max slid into the room, backpack already slung on one shoulder, hair still a little wild from sleep. "You forgot the napkin," he said gently, and I handed him one, automatic. He kissed my elbow and ran to put on his shoes. When the door closed behind him a minute later, the house exhaled. I pulled a notebook from the junk drawer and flattened it on the table. The first line came easy, the way some truths do when you've carried them too long. At the top, I wrote in block letters, "No more paying for proximity." Then I made columns like a bookkeeper who finally decided to audit her own heart. Left side, what I do. Middle, what they demand. Right, what it costs. Soccer fees, mine. Website hosting for Chloe back when her first studio wouldn't load on phones, mine. Derek's court filing fee after a mistake that ate a winter afternoon, mine. Saturday's cake, the banner, the cooler of waters, mine. On the middle line, I wrote what came through the thread like a script they'd rehearsed. Deposit by Friday. Be an adult. Cover Grandma. The right column filled itself in numbers and in something I couldn't price. The quiet I kept paying. the dignity that always seemed to cost extra. My phone buzzed, Jonah's name on the screen. He was out of town, but never far. "How's your morning?" the text read. I sent a picture of the PDF page with my headshot and title. A call came through before I could type more. "You didn't agree to this," he said after a breath. His voice stayed soft, like he knew if he pushed, the pieces might scatter. "I didn't," I said. "They printed it anyway." He was silent for a second, and in that beat I could hear the hum of my refrigerator, the same steady note that saw me through more evenings than it should have. "Then hear me," he said. "You don't owe them access to your piece just because they share your last name." I let the sentence land. It fit in my chest like it had been measured. After we hung up, I went back to the notebook. I drew one last line, thick and final, under the columns. I wrote a single word beneath it. No. Not the kind that starts an argument, the kind that ends an assumption. I closed the cover, slid the notebook into the drawer, and stood for a moment in the quiet. The streamers in the backyard had come down, the folding chairs stacked by the fence, but something else remained upright in me. A decision, clear and exact. The doorbell never rang on Saturday. Something else was going to ring now, and when it did, I intended to answer. By Thursday afternoon, the decision had settled inside me like a level bubble finding center. I cleared a space on the dining table, opened my laptop, and titled a blank email the way you'd label a file you plan to keep for a long time. Subject: unauthorized sponsorship listing, immediate removal. I wrote what happened in plain language. I attached the invite PDF with my headshot stamped under primary family sponsor. I added screenshots from the family thread, "We'll be there," next to the brunch photo that showed they were not. The note about deposit due Friday next to Maya will cover grandma. I added the timestamp from Max's party, the empty chairs, the cake still whole. I kept the tone steady, not a sharp edge in it, just the truth laid flat. At the bottom I typed, "Please confirm removal of my name and image from all materials and communications. Do not accept any future listings under my name without written consent." My finger hovered for a beat, then I pressed send. The message left with a small whoosh that felt bigger than it sounded. I took a breath and opened the family chat. I didn't write a preface. I posted the photo from Saturday, the banner still taped to the fence, 10 candles waiting, white chairs in polite rows, and underneath it I pasted their promises. Wouldn't miss it. After the gym, party favors on me. I waited long enough to hear my own heartbeat, then set the phone on the table and made myself a cup of coffee I didn't want but knew how to make. The replies arrived fast, like they'd been typing them all week. Chloe: "Why air this here?" Linda: "Don't guilt us." Focus on the Sweet 16, deposit due Friday, be an adult. Derek: "If it's open bar, worth it. Maya can spot me and Jess, right?" I typed one word, no. I didn't attach a paragraph to hold it up. It could stand on its own legs. 3 dots appeared and disappeared. The thread went silent long enough for the coffee to cool. I put the mug in the sink and wiped the counter in small, practiced circles. The house felt wider when I didn't try to make it small enough for their comfort. The next morning after I dropped Max at school, I drove straight to the hardware store. The man behind the counter looked up and nodded like he knew why most people come in on a Friday with that particular set to their shoulders. "Lock change?" he asked. "Something solid," I said. Quiet. Back home, I set the new deadbolt on the mat, read the folded instructions twice, and gathered a screwdriver and a patience I hadn't used for myself in years. The old lock came loose with a small protest. The new one slid in, as if the door had been measured for this moment. When I tightened the last screw and tested the latch, the sound it made was clean and certain. Click. Not loud, just final. I held the brass in my palm a second longer, felt the cool weight of it, then opened a fresh manila folder and wrote a title across the tab: Receipts, Boundaries. I slipped a printout of my sent email inside, then a copy of the invite page with my headshot circled, then the screenshots, each labeled with a date and time. Not to build a case against them, I'd already stopped pleading it, but to build a record for myself, proof that the line I drew wasn't in sand. My phone buzzed on the table. For a heartbeat, I expected pushback. Instead, a new email previewed on the lock screen. Thank you for reaching out. We are reviewing immediately. I set the phone face down and watched the morning light shift across the floor. The house was quiet in a way that didn't ask me to explain it. I stood in the doorway, turned the new bolt once more, and let the click be the last word for now. Sunday morning smelled like pancakes and rain. I was flipping the second batch when the doorbell pressed hard, not the quick tap of a neighbor, but a practiced touch that knew its own authority. Max sat at the table in dinosaur pajamas, building a syrup tower on his plate. "Stay here, buddy," I said, and wiped my hands on a towel. Two uniformed officers stood on the porch, hats beaded with drizzle. The taller one offered a polite half-smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Ms. Tran?" "Yes." "Ma'am, we've had a welfare check request. Caller raised concerns about erratic behavior, said there's a minor in the home." For a second, the world narrowed to the frame of the doorway, the brass of the new deadbolt cool under my fingertips, the quiet behind me like a witness. "You're welcome to come in," I said. "We're making breakfast." They stepped inside and let their gaze do the work. The house was itself, shoes lined by the door, a school flyer held to the fridge by a magnet that looks like a tomato, bills stacked neatly by the phone. In the kitchen, the griddle hissed. Max looked up, spoon midair. The shorter officer crouched a little to meet him. "Morning, champ. Everything okay?" Max nodded. "Mom's making pancakes." "I can smell them," the officer said, and meant it. I kept my hands open on the counter. "I'll tell you what this is," I said. "My son turned 10 last week. My family promised to come, and then they didn't. 2 days later, they sent an invite for my niece's Sweet 16, $2,000 a person, and put my name and headshot on it as primary family sponsor without asking. I told the venue to remove me. I changed my locks. I told them no. This," I gestured lightly between us, "is payback dressed as concern." The taller officer's shoulders loosened a notch. "Let me guess. Same folks who promised they'd be there?" "Yes." He glanced around again, taking in the dishes drying in a rack, the list on the chalkboard by the door, milk, paper towels, science fair dates, regular life making its regular case. The shorter one spoke softly. "We see this sometimes. People get used to free labor and easy access. When you change the terms, they panic and call us." "They can't come in without you asking them," the taller added. "If they show up, don't engage. Call dispatch. We'll handle it." They did a quick pass of the rooms, the way they're trained to, eyes on exits, eyes on hands. But their pace told me the story they were writing in their heads didn't include danger. In the living room, the Lego box sat open like a plan for later. In Max's room, the bed was made the way 10-year-olds make beds, earnest and mostly. Back in the kitchen, the taller officer spotted the manila folder on the counter. He read the tab and almost smiled. "Receipts/boundaries," he said. "It helps me remember what's mine," I answered. "Keep it," he said. "Paper is quiet, but it carries." They gave me a case number I would likely never need and left with the same polite weight they'd arrived with. The rain eased to a mist. I closed the door, turned the new lock out of habit more than need, and let the click settle the air. My phone buzzed on the counter, an email from the venue manager. "We have removed your name and image from all promotional materials. Any attempt to reinstate has been declined per your written notice." I read it twice, then printed it. The paper slid warm into my hand. I added it to the folder behind the screenshots and the invite page, each sheet labeled with a date and a small note in the corner. Max scraped his fork across his plate, a happy sound. "Are the next pancakes for me?" They're all for you, I said, and poured another circle onto the griddle. When the batter bubbled, I looked at the door and felt nothing but the shape of my own house around me. No one's key would turn here without my say-so. The phone stayed face down. The folder stayed within reach. The morning stretched out, simple and steady, like a road that finally knew where it was going. The day of the Sweet 16 arrived without ceremony, a gray ribbon of hours that didn't ask anything of me. By late afternoon, the family thread went strangely quiet, like a room after someone turns off a radio you didn't realize was on. Max finished his homework at the kitchen table, tongue tucked in the corner of his mouth the way he does when the numbers line up. "Can we go somewhere that isn't a store?" he asked. "Somewhere with a sky." We drove to the park with the uneven swings and the merry-go-round that complains but keeps turning. The light slid toward Honey. Max chased a soccer ball across the grass with a pack of kids he'd never met, the kind of instant alliance childhood invents without paperwork. I took the bench facing the field. The air smelled like cut grass and warm dirt. My phone buzzed in my pocket and I let it. Then it buzzed again and again. Aunt May. She doesn't text much, and she never sends 3 in a row. I opened the thread. "They're at the venue," she wrote. "Chloe is arguing with the florist about the arch, wants it fuller. They say the order was already set. A minute later, your mother's on the phone with the manager. The premium package she promised isn't listed on the contract. They're saying additional fees." I looked out at Max, hair wild, knees already green. Across the field, he lined up a kick and took it too soon, laughing at himself before the ball even rolled out. I texted back, "Thank you for telling me." Aunt May's dots pulsed. "The lights just flickered," she wrote. "DJ says someone tripped a breaker. People are murmuring." A breeze came up and flipped the edge of my jacket. I watched a maple leaf pinwheel to the ground and thought about the word premium until it sounded like something you should only ever buy for people who show up. Another text. "Derek is drunk. He's arguing with the front desk about the bar wristbands. Your mom's saying the list is wrong. They're saying she never sent one." I let my phone rest in my lap and breathed in. The evening thinned into that soft gold you can walk around inside. "Hey, stranger," Jonah's voice came from behind me. He set 2 milkshakes on the bench, 1 chocolate for Max, 1 vanilla for me, and leaned forward with his forearms on his knees like he'd been a part of this park forever. "You made it," I said. "Conference wrapped early," he said. "How's the sky?" "Doing what it's supposed to." We watched Max join a noisy game of tag. The soccer ball lay forgotten like an old plan, the park filled with the sound of shoes and laughter, and someone's radio faintly playing a song from 10 summers ago. My phone buzzed again. "Aunt May. The lights are out. During the cake reveal, people are trying to use their phone flashlights. Your mother is saying the venue sabotaged it. The manager says the bill is short. No one is leaving until it's paid." Jonah looked at me. "Do you want to go home?" he asked. "No," I said. "I want to be exactly here." He nodded. We didn't talk for a while. Silence didn't need us to explain it. When Max ran over, breathless, Jonah handed him the chocolate shake. "For the Star Striker," he said. "I missed the goal," Max laughed, taking a long pull through the straw. "You found the game," Jonah said. "That's better." Twilight softened the edges of the trees. The field lights clanked on over the baseball diamond, painting a piece of the park brighter than the rest. My phone lit again. "Aunt May. They're fighting with the vendors. Your name came up. Chloe shouted that you ruined it by backing out. The manager said your removal notice was on file." People stared. I typed back. "I wasn't invited. I wasn't a sponsor. Thank you for staying out of it." She answered, "I am in a corner with a plate of cold appetizers and my good shoes in my purse. Proud of you, kid." Jonah glanced at my hands. "Bad?" "Predictable," I said. "They'll have a lot to say tomorrow. Tonight they're busy with the bill." He nodded like he'd expected that answer all along. Max leaned against me, the kind of lean that still includes all of his weight, and I wrapped an arm around his shoulders. On the far side of the park, someone lit a sparkler and traced a quick, bright circle that disappeared as soon as it was made. We sat until the air cooled and the crickets took over where the birds left off. When we finally stood, the sky had turned that early night blue that makes you whisper. We walked to the car without hurry. The milkshake cups went into the trash. The ball thumped once in the trunk, just to remind us it was there. The phone stayed in my pocket, buzzing once more, and then going still. The next afternoon passed like a long exhale. I did laundry in quiet loops, folded towels that still held a little sun from the line, and set aside a shirt of Max's that had learned grass the night before. He finished a comic at the kitchen table, tongue tucked into the corner of his mouth, while the hero crossed a bridge that didn't look safe. We were both in the soft between of things when the mail slid through the slot and tapped the mat. An envelope sat there alone, addressed in a round, childish hand that made my chest go tight before I even picked it up. I turned it over. No return address, just a sticker of a crooked heart sealing the flap. At the sink, I ran a finger under the paper and opened it. Inside was a sheet of notebook paper with wide blue lines and a few wrinkles where someone had held it too hard. $2 were taped in the middle, one bill over the other, Scotch tape running like a sash. In purple crayon, "Happy birthday, Max. Sorry we couldn't come. Love, Grandma." Max looked up when I didn't say anything. "What is it?" I turned and handed him the note. He read it once, then again, the way 10-year-olds read when words have weight they can feel but not name. "She remembered," he said, soft. "Can we buy ice cream with it?" "We can," I said. "Let's go now." We drove the 3 minutes to the corner shop with the bell on the door that always rings too late. The air inside was colder than it needed to be, a small mercy. The glass case held the same choices it always had, colors that promised more than they delivered. Max pressed his fingertips to the glass and chose mint chocolate chip with extra sprinkles. I took vanilla, the way I do when I want something I can trust. The total rang up to exactly $2, and the man behind the counter added an extra napkin to our stack like he knew what the money had been meant for. We sat on the curb under a sky that couldn't decide between blue and gold. Traffic shuffled past in a mild mood. Max's cone went soft at the edges almost immediately. He licked carefully, the way kids do when they decide to be responsible with joy. I took a slow taste of mine and let sweet and cold be the only facts for a minute. "Mom," Max said around the spoon, "we're rich." He meant it like a joke, but it landed like truth. I looked at him, knees scuffed, eyes bright, a smudge of green on his cheek that would find a pillow later, and nodded. "We are." We finished the cones and tossed the napkins. Back at the house, I slid the crayon letter into the folder on the counter. Receipts, boundaries, behind the venue email and the screenshots. I wrote a small note in the corner, $2, mint chocolate chip, peace. It wasn't evidence against anyone. It was a record for us, the way you mark a growth chart on a kitchen door frame. Jonah knocked once and let himself in like he'd been told he could. He carried a paper bag that beat the smell of soy sauce to the table. "Dinner delivery," he said. He caught the edge of my face and paused. "Good news?" "Small news, the kind that matters." I told him about the letter, about the cones worth exactly $2, about the way the man at the counter added an extra napkin like a benediction. He listened the way he always does, without interrupting the shape of what I'm trying to say. We ate at the table, cartons opened like little cities. Max told us about the comic's bridge and how the hero made it across by taking smaller steps than anyone expected. The line hung between us, simple and useful. After dishes, Max built a short tower from Lego and then abandoned it for bed. I tucked him in and stood in the doorway for a breath. The house hummed, fridge steady, clock exact, the new lock a small round promise on the door. My phone lay face down on the counter. No one was asking anything of me. No one had a key that fit here anymore unless I'd given it. I put the $2 letter on the fridge with the tomato magnet. It looked right there. Ordinary as a shopping list and twice as important. Then I turned off the kitchen light and let the room hold its own quiet. The day had cost $2. We got our money's worth. The week after the Sweet 16 moved like air after a storm, everything damp but calm. The family thread went still. No apologies, no receipts, just an absence that took up less space each day. I filled the edges with small, solid things. Early walks with Max before school, coffee on the porch while the street woke up, a grocery list that only had our names on it. At work, I fixed what was broken and didn't check my phone between tickets. The venue's confirmation sat in the folder on the counter with a fresh paperclip like it meant business. The house learned a calmer rhythm. Dinner, homework, dishes, a cartoon, lights out. I slept through the night, which felt like a gift wrapped in plain paper. Guilt tried the door once or twice. It came dressed as old photos, barbecues where I paid for the grill, birthdays where I bought the candles and the silence. I looked, I remembered, and then I put the album away. Warm memories don't excuse cold habits. I wrote that in the margin of my notebook and closed the cover. One evening, Jonah came by with soup and a grin. We ate at the table with the tomato magnet holding up the $2 note like a flag. "You're quieter," he said, not as a concern, just an observation. "I think I stopped spending energy I didn't have," I told him. He lifted his cup. "To boundaries." "To peace," I said, and we clinked like people who meant it. Later that night, when the dishes were done and Max had fallen asleep with a book open on his chest, I opened the folder again and added one more page, a brief email from the venue manager thanking me for clear documentation. I wrote a line across the top. "Paper is quiet, but it carries." Then I slid the folder back beside the cookbooks, where it belonged. The next afternoon, a text from Aunt May arrived after school hours. "You missed nothing," she wrote. "They fought with the vendors. The lights went out during the cake. The bill landed like a brick. Your name came up and the manager shut it down. Your mother cried in the restroom. Chloe said you ruined it. Derek left with his jacket inside out. Stay home. You're better off." I read it twice and felt something unclench that I didn't know was still gripping. "Thank you," I wrote, "for telling me, for standing out of the way." "Always," she answered. "Proud of you." That evening I made pasta and a salad. Max told me about a science experiment with food coloring that made water climb a paper towel like it had somewhere to be. When the plates were clean and the counters wiped, we watched the end of a movie we'd started 2 nights ago, and he fell asleep halfway through the credits, the safe way kids do. I carried him to bed, tucked the blanket under his chin, and stood for a moment in the doorway, listening to the ordinary music of a home doing its job. The hum of the fridge, the soft click of the hallway clock, the house settling like a tired animal finding a comfortable shape. On the porch, the neighborhood was quiet. Somewhere far off, a burst of fireworks rose and disappeared without changing the sky. I went back in, closed the door, and turned the deadbolt. The sound it made wasn't loud, but it traveled. Click. Not a threat. A promise. I set my phone face down on the counter and left it there. No one else's key fit this place anymore. The last word belonged to the lock and to us. I whispered goodnight to a house that finally sounded like ours and let the click keep watch.